The cargo bay of the stellar drift smelled like recycled air, machine oil, and the faint chemical tang of hyperspace residue. I was elbow-deep in the coolant system of our secondary engine when the comm crackled to life. "Jake, we've got an incoming transmission," Maya's voice came through, tinged with confusion. "It's marked as Imperial Priority from the Zorathi Royal Court." I pulled my head out of the engine compartment so fast I cracked it against the housing. "What? The Zorathi?" "Maya, we're a cargo runner. We haul spare parts and protein paste between outer rim stations. Why would? Just get up here." I wiped the grease off my hands and made my way to the bridge, my mind racing. The Zorathi Empire was one of the major powers in this sector, elegant, ancient, and so far above a freelance cargo ship's pay grade that we might as well be different species, which technically we were. Maya was already on the view screen when I arrived, her dark eyes wide. On the display was a Zorathi official, his orange skin marked with the formal silver patterns of the royal household, his blonde hair bound in the elaborate braids that indicated high rank. "Captain Jake Rivera," the official said, his voice carrying the melodious quality all Zorathi possessed. "You are hereby summoned to the royal palace on Zorath Prime. A transport will arrive at your coordinates within the hour. This is not a request." The transmission ended before I could respond. "What the hell did you do?" Maya demanded. "Nothing. I haven't even been to Zorath Prime. The closest we've gotten to Zorathi space was that supply run to the border station 3 months ago, and we didn't even leave the ship." But the transport arrived exactly when promised. A sleek royal shuttle that made our battered cargo hauler look like a flying scrap heap. I had no choice but to go, leaving Maya in charge with strict instructions to jump to hyperspace and run if this turned out to be some kind of elaborate arrest. The shuttle ride to Zorath Prime was surreal. The pilot wouldn't answer my questions, and the interior was so luxurious I was afraid to touch anything with my still slightly greasy hands. Through the viewport, the Zorathi homeworld grew from a distant sphere to a breathtaking vision of gleaming cities and pristine oceans. The royal palace was a masterpiece of architecture that seemed to grow organically from a seaside cliff. I was escorted through corridors of polished crystal and living gardens, past guards in ceremonial armor, until I was deposited in a waiting chamber that was probably worth more than my entire ship. I paced, my work boots silent on the impossibly soft carpet, trying to figure out what I'd done to warrant royal attention. Had I accidentally smuggled something illegal, offended someone important, violated some obscure trade law? The doors opened, and I spun around, expecting more officials. Instead, I found myself face to face with the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. She was Zorathi, her skin a vibrant orange that seemed to glow from within, marked with intricate bioluminescent patterns in gold and white that pulsed gently with her breathing. Her hair was long, blonde, and perfectly styled, adorned with what I assumed were royal ornaments. She was tall, taller than me by a few inches, and dressed in flowing robes that looked like captured starlight. And she was staring at me with an intensity that made my heart hammer against my ribs. "You," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "You're real." Yes," I managed. "I'm Jake Rivera. I think there's been some kind of mistake." She crossed the distance between us in 3 swift steps and grabbed my hands, her touch warm and slightly electric. Her eyes, large and luminous amber, searched my face with desperate intensity. "No mistake. she said firmly. Then, to my complete shock, her eyes filled with tears. "I've been searching for you for 6 months. Princess Kaisara," a stern voice cut through the moment. An older Zorathi woman entered, her skin marked with the deeper orange of age and high status. "Decorum, please." The princess, because of course she was a princess, because my life had apparently become completely insane, reluctantly released my hands but didn't step back. "Minister Velsa, this is him. This is the human from my vision." Vision. I looked between them, completely lost. "I'm sorry, but I have absolutely no idea what's going on." Minister Velsa sighed, a sound that suggested this wasn't the first time she'd had this conversation. "Captain Rivera, perhaps you should sit down. This requires some explanation." What followed was the strangest conversation of my life. Apparently, the Zorathi royal family possessed what they called the sight, a form of precognition that manifested differently in different individuals. For Princess Kaisara, it came in the form of vivid, prophetic dreams. "6 months ago, I began dreaming of you," Kaisara explained, sitting across from me in a chair she'd pulled unnecessarily close. Her knee was almost touching mine, and she kept looking at me like I was about to disappear. Every night, the same human man with dark hair and green eyes, always wearing strange clothes covered in oil stains. I glanced down at my work coveralls, which were indeed stained with oil. "In the dreams, we were together," she continued, and a soft blush darkened her orange skin to a deeper hue. "Not just physically present, but connected, bonded. The dreams showed me a future where you and I—" She trailed off, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin flashing rapidly with emotion. "Where you saved the Empire," Minister Velsa finished dryly. "Multiple times, according to the princess's accounts. You and she working together prevented disasters, forged alliances, and generally became legendary figures in Zorathi history." I stared at them. That's insane. I'm a cargo hauler. I fix engines and transport spare parts. I'm not exactly hero material." "The sight is never wrong," Kaisara said firmly. She reached out and took my hand again, and I noticed that her fingers were trembling. "I know how this must sound to you, but I've seen you in my dreams every night for 6 months. I know that you drink your coffee black because you think adding anything to it is wasteful. I know you have a scar on your left shoulder from when you fell off a loading dock as a teenager. I know that you hum old Earth songs when you work and that you're afraid of heights, but you never let it stop you." My blood ran cold. Every single thing she'd said was true. Things that no one could possibly know, certainly not a Zorathi princess I'd never met. "That's why the reaction is so intense," Velsa explained gently. "For 6 months, Princess Kaisara has lived a lifetime with you in her dreams. To her, you're not a stranger. You're the person she knows better than anyone else in the universe. And now you're here, real and solid, and everything she saw is beginning to align." I looked at Kaisara, really looked at her, and saw the raw emotion in her eyes, joy, relief, fear, and something deeper that I couldn't quite name. "This is crazy," I whispered. "I know," she replied. "Believe me, I know. Do you think I wanted this? I'm a princess of the Zorathi Empire. I had my life planned out. A political marriage, diplomatic duties, a carefully controlled existence." Her grip on my hand tightened. "And then you appeared in my dreams and turned everything upside down." Over the next few hours, they explained the full situation. The Zorathi High Council had initially been skeptical of Kaisara's visions, but the sight had proven accurate too many times to ignore. When she'd provided enough specific details, my name, my ship's registration, even our recent flight paths, they decided to investigate. The first vision showed you preventing an assassination attempt on my father, the Emperor, Kaisara explained as we walked through the palace gardens, trailed by a discreet security detail. It happens in 3 weeks during the Festival of Lights. In my dream, you notice something the guards missed, a flaw in the security protocols because you think like an engineer, not a soldier. And you believe this because the site has predicted 17 major events in the past decade alone, she said simply. My grandmother foresaw the Krellian Peace Accord. My aunt predicted the collapse of the Theta station before the structural surveys found the cracks. The site is not perfect, but when it speaks clearly, we listen. We stopped by a fountain, the water creating rainbows in the alien sunlight. Kaisara turned to face me, and I was struck again by how beautiful she was and how completely out of my league. I understand if you want to leave, she said quietly. This isn't fair to you. You didn't ask to be pulled into royal politics or prophetic visions. You have your own life, your own ship, your own future planned out. She looked down at our still joined hands. But I had to meet you. I had to know if you were real, if the connection I felt in the dreams was. Was what? I asked softly. She looked up at me and her eyes were swimming with tears again. Real, she whispered. I know it's insane. We just met, but I feel like I've known you forever, like I've been waiting for you my whole life. And here's the thing, the absolutely crazy thing that I couldn't explain or rationalize. I felt it too. Standing there in that alien garden, holding hands with a princess from another species, I felt a connection that I'd never experienced before. It was like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. When I looked at her, something in my chest shifted and settled, like a key turning in a lock. I should go, I said, but I didn't move. You should, she agreed, but her hand tightened on mine. This is crazy, completely insane. I haul cargo for a living. I'm a princess with the weight of an empire on my shoulders. We're from different species. The dreams showed us overcoming that. I took a shaky breath. What if your visions are wrong? What if I can't do the things you've seen? What if I'm just a disappointment? Kaisara stepped closer, close enough that I could see the intricate patterns of bioluminescence on her skin, the flecks of gold in her amber eyes. Then we figure it out together. The site shows possibilities, not certainties. The future can be changed. But every vision I've had, every dream I've experienced has one constant, you and me choosing each other despite the odds. I don't know anything about being a hero, I admitted. Then it's a good thing I've had 6 months of dreams showing me exactly who you are, she said with a small smile. You're brave without trying to be. You're clever in ways that no one expects. You see solutions that others miss because you don't think like everyone else. And you're kind, Jake. In every dream, no matter how dire the situation, you never lost that fundamental kindness. I was drowning in her eyes, in the intensity of her belief in me. What happens now? Now. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Now we start figuring out how a cargo hauler and a princess can possibly make this work. We prepare for the assassination attempt. We face the council's skepticism. We navigate the politics of a human and a Zorathi being, whatever we're going to be to each other. Her expression softened. But we do it together, if you're willing. I thought about my cargo ship, my simple life hauling freight across the outer rim. I thought about the absurdity of prophetic dreams and royal summons and a princess who looked at me like I hung the stars. And then I thought about how right it felt to be standing here with her, how natural it was to hold her hand, how the connection between us thrummed like a physical thing. I must be completely insane, I muttered. Is that a yes? Hope bloomed in her expression. That's a let's see where this goes, I corrected. Then, because apparently I was committed to this insanity. Tell me about this assassination attempt. If I'm going to be a hero, I might as well start with the engineering perspective you mentioned. Kaisara's smile could have powered a small sun. I knew you'd say that. In the dream, you started by examining the ventilation systems. As we walked back toward the palace, her hand warm in mine, I caught sight of our reflection in a crystal window. A grease-stained cargo hauler and a glowing princess, side by side. It should have looked ridiculous. Instead, it looked right. Maybe prophetic dreams weren't so crazy after all, or maybe I was just crazy enough to believe in them. Either way, I had the feeling my life was never going to be simple again. And looking at Kaisara's intense, joyful, slightly overwhelming reaction to my mere presence, the tears she'd cried, the desperate way she'd grabbed my hands, the relief in her eyes when I agreed to stay, I was starting to think that maybe complicated was exactly what I needed. The universe had a strange sense of humor, but for once I wasn't going to argue with it.